And now we're delighted to welcome to the programme Dominic Cogan, who's a mindfulness teacher. So thanks for coming on the programme.
Thanks for inviting me, Pat.
I think we had you on about 6 years ago before
COVID. It's quite a long time ago. It's definitely before COVID, yeah.
Yeah, and we were meaning to have you back, but between one thing and another, we didn't get round to it.
We're happy to be here.
So you want to talk specifically about self-compassion, but maybe just to give people an idea of what mindfulness is. It's it's a big concept.
Right, mindfulness. Gosh, mindfulness is basically it's paying attention in the present moment to things as they are, with a kind of a quality of non-judgment, or a quality of friendliness towards yourself and your experience. Now, I could unpack that definition for a lot, but I don't think we need to do that. But basically, a lot of people think mindfulness is about just a relaxation exercise. There can be a relaxing element to it, and a lot of people are attracted to it because they want to relax. But it's much more radical than that. It's about changing our relationship to our experience and our relationship to ourselves. And that's also where the connection with compassion comes in as well.
So the notion of self-compassion, what does that basically mean? Is it the same as pity or empathy or sympathy or...
Yeah, those are the words that people bandy about, and a kind of pity has got a bad press in recent years, because I suppose when we think of pity, we think of feeling sorry for people, which also means kind of partly looking down on them, thinking they're somehow less than we are. So compassion is very different from that. I have a few definitions here. One is from a well-known psychologist in the UK called Paul Gilbert, who's written a number of books, and he has developed a kind of therapy called compassion-focused therapy. And he says that, first of all, to define compassion in the short sense, it's a sensitivity to suffering in ourselves and others. Now, often when we don't have mindfulness, we don't necessarily know what's going on in ourselves, and we may not actually see the suffering in others. The second part of it is that it's a commitment to try and alleviate the suffering and prevent it. So it's not just about feeling sorry for or anything like that. And then the other thing about it is that it has a kind of receptive, tender side, but it also has an active and powerful side. So you could be compassionate towards another person, and you could be holding your ground and being very tough, and you could be actually saying, sorry, this behavior is not acceptable. Like a parent dealing with let's say a teenager who is, abusing alcohol, for example. The most compassionate thing might be to set rules and to set boundaries, not handing them another beer, So actually, to be compassionate is, people often think of it as a kind of a warm, fuzzy, friendly kind of thing. But to be compassionate requires courage, If you're working as a doctor or a nurse or whatever, and you're in the face of huge suffering, it takes a lot of courage to do that. And it needs a certain kind of mental toughness, but it also requires a certain wisdom and patience. I could say more, but then I don't want to bore the audience,
I'll say as much as you think.
Well, one thing to say is, there's three components of self-compassion. So the first is self-kindness, or the capacity to treat ourselves kindly. And that's a big thing, because many of us actually, especially when we're not feeling good about ourselves, or maybe our life circumstances are difficult, we berate ourselves, we blame ourselves for why we're feeling the way we are, And so there's often a kind of a powerful inner critic. That inner critic can be developed maybe because of, harsh treatment as a child, either from teachers or parents or other people. Maybe there might be stigma in the wider society, particularly if we have an obvious disability. And actually, if we have a less obvious disability, it can even be worse, because people may not make any allowances at all for us. So there can be a lot of self-criticism. So the first thing is can you bring self-kindness? And that's a big ask, and it doesn't happen straight away, The other one, the second one, is this idea, I found this really helpful for myself personally, is what's known as common humanity, that when we're suffering or when we're feeling inferior or whatever it might be we're feeling, we can often feel, I must be the only one. I'm the only one who is carrying this much shame, or who feels this excluded, or who feels this much like a failure, or who's this depressed or this anxious. The reality is, we're all going around with masks, and people are saying, how are you? And you say, oh, I'm grand, I'm fine. Where I live in Kildare, people say, not a bother. And I kind of think how true could that be for any of us in the world we live in? I think most of us have things to bother us in reality, So common humanity is actually recognizing I might be suffering right now, and it's not necessarily because there's something inherently wrong with me. It's that I'm a human being, and if I'm a human being, sometimes I'm going to suffer. So the second aspect of the common humanity is a way of helping to remove the shame of not feeling happy or not feeling healthy or somehow feeling less than, And then the third one then, which is mindfulness, which is this is the remedy over identification. So typically what happens, we're very addicted to our thoughts. And we think just because I have a thought, it must be true. A lot of our thoughts are nonsense and they're very repetitive. So today is Monday. That thought's okay. It's a fact, and we can kind of share it. But if I said people don't like me, I mean that's just an opinion, isn't it? I mean, who am I talking about? Have I gone around and asked millions of people that question? No, probably one or two people were unkind to me. So now I've come up with the idea that people don't like me. So mindfulness it allows us to notice what our thoughts are, not to get rid of them, but to kind of stand back from them and see what's really going on and realize that just because I have a thought, I don't necessarily have to buy into it. So those are the three components of self-compassion. And I could say an awful lot more, but maybe we might round back to it. But I have a feeling you want to ask me a more personal question, Pat.
Oh yeah, why are you so interested yourself in the idea of self-compassion?
Well, I would love to say it's because I'm a clever guy and I love the theory of it and I want to study it academically, but that would be a lie, right? The real reason I'm interested in self-compassion is that I have struggled most of my life. I've struggled a lot with depression and I've struggled a lot with anxiety. And I would say the anxiety is more prevalent for me in the last 20 years than the depression, but they often go hand in hand. So if you're anxious long enough, it'll make you depressed, because you'll be depressed. Well, why am I so anxious? And why am I the only one? You'll have all those kind of thoughts. So back around 2003, I would have had a major episode of really disabling anxiety where I had to stop working. And it was a very scary time. And not only was I very anxious, but along with that came a huge amount of shame. Because it was like I was a functioning adult, I was married with kids and I had a job, and now I couldn't go to work. And what do I say? So there was a lot of shame. And one of the things I decided to do at that time was I thought, if somebody asks me why I'm not at work, I'm going to tell them the truth, right? And I'm going to live with the discomfort of that. And I was surprised, actually, by people's reactions because, okay, you will occasionally get people who have no understanding of that at all and they're embarrassed and they want to walk away. But actually, quite a few people said to me things like, oh, panic attacks. Oh, that's happened to me too. I have some sense of how you might be suffering right now, and I hope you get well, So actually, because I took the risk of being honest, I found that there was more support. First of all, I thought there was no support, thought no one's going to want to know. But I found telling people was a kind of a healing thing to do. Now, of course, I did go and get some professional help, which was very, very helpful at that time. In the end, whether you go for professional help or not, the real work has to be done with yourself. So I would have initially have learned mindfulness, and that was a game changer. It didn't cure me of anxiety exactly. It brought my anxiety levels down. and it kind of lessened the shame that I was carrying around having mental health difficulties. And then it motivated me. I thought, okay, this has helped me. I want to help other people. So I learned to become a mindfulness teacher. And then later on, I did more specific training in mindful self-compassion, or mindfulness-based compassionate living is a particular training that I've done. So like for me, this interest in mindful self-compassion it's very personal. It's not academic. I mean, I'm interested in the academic side as well, but it's real for me. And even right now, I could say that in my life, I would say that anxiety is probably there as a potential for me at any point in my life. Like, it hasn't just kind of gone away overnight, but if it comes back, which it does from time to time, you know, I have a set of tools that I can use to support myself, and I can see the different options that are there. And then if I fall into old patterns of shame or blame or whatever, you know, I can use my mindfulness and the compassion practices to kind of disentangle those things, you know. So then I'm just dealing with the bare anxiety, or it could be depression or whatever. And things become more manageable then, you know. And the real thing as well, that people, an objection many people have when they hear about this is, compassion, self-compassion, isn't that just kind of navel-gazing and just, isn't that quite selfish? But actually, if you start with self-compassion, you will automatically start feeling compassionate towards other people. It's a natural byproduct of it, so there's nothing selfish about it. If you try to be compassionate towards other people and skip the bit about yourself, you could actually cause harm, because you lack the sensitivity you'll need to support people who might be going through a tough time, because you're not in touch with your own feelings. You don't really know what you're talking about. It's all coming out of your head like from a book. And that kind of intervention is not that helpful. And I think, at the risk of offending people, I mean, there's many, many good people working in the mental health services and in hospitals. Sometimes people in those areas haven't done the work on themselves. They may know the theory, they may not have done the work on themselves, and sometimes their interventions in supporting people who need compassion may be a little bit clumsy, because they haven't got that wisdom, they haven't got that insight, you know. Sometimes they learn it on the job, though, like through trial and error, but I think it's best if people can start off by turning towards themselves and see, can I offer this to myself, you know, as a beginning stage, you know, because if you're working with people who are very unwell or who are overwhelmed, whatever, it's very challenging, and we do get affected by other people's suffering. You know, it's impossible to come home after a day working in a hospital and not be touched by suffering you might have seen during the day, you know.
So do people kind of confuse it with positive thinking? Because there's a big industry, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to be careful about positive thinking. Positive thinking is not wrong per se. The problem is that when we bring a kind of a sense of ego, a sense of ambition to, I'm going to think positively, that usually means I'm going to ignore the truth about how I'm actually feeling, and I'm going to force myself to feel something, even though that isn't natural to me at all, right? So what we can say, and there is that tradition in the training for self-compassion, we can recognize sometimes that maybe we need to bring in an ingredient, you know, around some aspect of positivity, like a gratitude practice or something. But mindfulness always starts out with saying, how am I actually feeling? Without trying to change that, and saying, what would it be like if I could turn towards myself, maybe I'm having a really tough time, and say, it's okay. It's okay. Right now, it's okay. It may not be comfortable, but it's okay, and I will be okay. And can I appreciate myself with all of my weaknesses, with all of my vulnerabilities, without having to be something special or without having to be good at something. And if I can do that, even get a glimpse of that or get a taste of that, that's transformative. And then joy or gratitude or whatever it is, they can flow out of that quite naturally in their own time. But I would say, like, people really need to be respectful of when they're not in a good mood and when other people are not in a good mood, and not try to force things out of that. You know, the exception to that is, like, if your house is on fire and the alarm is going off, you know, that's not the time to be focusing on how you're feeling on the inside. You need to get out and run, you know, and take action.
Yeah, because being in a good mood is kind of the whole thrust of our culture, isn't it? The whole advertising industry and so on.
Yeah.
Feeling good is kind of what it's all about.
And that's really a form of manipulation for people to buy products. You know, if you buy this car or you taste this kind of coffee, you will feel better. And there's this big expectation that we should be joyful and happy all of the time. But, you know, in actual fact, if you listen to the news and you think of the wars, the oppression and the injustice and the poverty, etc., 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 people who are depressed in a way are picking up on the state of the world, and there's a kind of a certain healthiness in saying I'm depressed when I hear about global warming or the what's happening in international politics right now. Obviously, you don't want to be depressed all of the time, but to be concerned about and sometimes to be deflated about things is, I would say, is a sign that you're maybe in touch with reality, you know. Now, obviously, you need to then say, okay, am I going to spend my whole day worrying about the climate crisis, or is there something I could do to support myself? Like a simple thing would be, okay, I'm going to actually walk in nature and I'm going to appreciate what we have, and I'm going to be mindful that when I go shopping and the choices I make in terms of how that might impact on the environment. But yeah, this idea of, like, even think of it like the whole idea of joy and happiness anyway. Those words only make sense when we know what the opposites are. Like, there's no up without down, you know, there's no in without out, you know. So we weren't designed to be happy 100% of the time. And if you look at all the great achievements of musicians and composers and writers or whatever, usually there's a very significant part of their life where they've touched into a deep sadness, and out of that, in some cases, has come wonderful wisdom or maybe beauty or some insight into the human experience that can be shared with the rest of the world. I mean, some of the most beautiful music is quite sad. I mean, you think of most of our Irish ballads, like they're sad and they're beautiful, you know. Nobody wants to really listen to a concert of music that's happy, happy, happy all of the time, you know. Which is probably why I think I find programs for young children on television slightly irritating, because there's so much forced happiness and everyone's shouting and screaming and exaggerating and high-fiving. It's so artificial, you know. And real children actually wear their emotions on their sleeve. When they're sad, they are really sad and they tell everybody about it and they cry.
Yes.
And they wait to be hugged or lifted up or, you know, reassured, you know. And then when they're happy, everybody knows about it. They're laughing, they're running, they're jumping around, you know. They're more honest. Yeah.
So I think you have a little exercise prepared to give some idea.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. And after that, maybe I'd like to just kind of mention for people who might be interested, just say where the roots of what I understand about compassion come from, in terms of who are the people who have kind of come up with some helpful ideas on it. So yeah, we can do a little practice right now. And, you know, if anyone is, obviously if you're driving, please do not close your eyes. And you don't actually have to close your eyes for this, but you could, if you have the comfort of being at home in a warm, kind of secure environment, you might feel comfortable closing your eyes, but you could also have just a a soft gaze. So this is just a kind of a tuning in. There's 3 main steps. And we're not trying to cure, we're not trying to fix, and we're not trying to be good at something. We're just doing a little experiment that gives a taste of how we might be compassionate towards ourselves. So step number 1 is to just tune in and notice. First of all, notice if you're sitting on a chair, that you are sitting on a chair, that your feet are supported by the ground, that your body is being held by the chair. Maybe you can feel your back resting against the back of the chair. Of course, you could be lying down on a bed, or you could be in a wheelchair, or whatever, some other kind of device as well. And just noticing the contact points between your body and whatever you're resting upon. So here we're just kind of grounding ourselves in the present moment, whether it's pleasant or not. And then tuning into the body itself and saying, how is my body right now anyway? So it could be that you feel really relaxed, or you could be holding a bit of tension. You might be aware of some physical pain in some part of your body, or maybe in quite a few parts of your body. And just noticing it with a kind of friendly awareness, not trying to change anything. And then we switch from the body to the mind and just being aware of how is the mind right now. So it could be bubbling with ideas, or you might be feeling foggy where you're not sure what the hell is going on at all with you. You might be finding it hard to make decisions about things. There may be a feeling of uncertainty, whatever's going on in the mind. There might be a sense of worry or anxiety. These are all very common, by the way, in case you think it's just you. It's very, very common. And worrying isn't always a bad thing, because sometimes it reminds us to take action, you know. And then just tuning into the mood, or you could say the heart area. What's the mood like, or what's the internal weather like? You know, on the inside, is it all sunny and calm and like a beautiful summer's day? Or maybe it's foggy and cloudy and you can't think straight and you're not sure how you feel? Or maybe it's stormy and there's strong emotions like anger or sadness or fear, perhaps. And remember about storms is that they come and thankfully they go as well, you know. So you can be with whatever is here now, not needing to change it, knowing that it will change. You know, the storm will go away and it'll get calm, and then other times it'll be calm now and it'll get stormy later. So we've just checked in with the body, the mind, and the heart, and with no agenda of trying to change anything, but really as best we can, allowing, even accepting the way we're feeling, whether it's pleasant, it may be a bit unpleasant, or maybe it's somewhere in between. And then the second step, which we kind of already mentioned a little bit, is this idea of common humanity. So particularly if you're struggling now in any way, to recognize that this is not because there's some fundamental flaw in any of us. This is just part of being a human being, common humanity. And you can be sure that wherever you're lying or sitting or standing right now, that there are plenty of people not that far away from you who are struggling as well in some way, whether it's physical pain or a mental health difficulty or whatever it might be. Maybe it's a financial worry, perhaps. So you're not alone. And it's wonderful to realize that when you feel low in mood, or you feel sad or anxious, that actually you're actually in good company. There's plenty of people have all kinds of reasons to be worried or feeling vulnerable for, for whatever reason. So any sense of shame, that if you're aware of any sense of shame, that it's easy for me to say to let it go, and I'm not going to say that, but if you can just recognize that it doesn't necessarily have to be there. And then the third step, and it's the last step, is to say, what would be something you could say to yourself right now that might be supportive, particularly if you know that you have a pattern of being very self-critical or shaming yourself, or maybe other people shaming you or criticizing you. We don't have control over how other people treat us, but we have a fair bit of control over how we treat ourselves. So, for example, you might say something like, may I be kind to myself right now. May I be kind to myself right now. If you like, you could place your hand maybe over your heart. You could put two hands if you like, as a way of soothing the body and soothing the mind and taking things to heart in a very healthy kind of way. If you're dealing with a lot of fear, you might say something like, may I be strong. May I be courageous. May I be strong. May I be courageous. Perhaps you have to go into a meeting that you're dreading, or you have to make a difficult decision, or maybe you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody who maybe isn't giving you the respect that you know that you deserve. So, may I be strong. Another possibility is that maybe there's some aspect of yourself that you don't like, or that you reject, or you feel ashamed of. Maybe other people are also expressing some negative attitudes towards you. And yet it may be, an integral part of who you are, whether it's whatever it might be, your physical appearance, your sexuality, your mental capacity, how much money you do or do not have in the bank. So you might say something like, may I accept myself as I am. May I accept myself just as I am. And then if you're carrying any kind of sense of despair about things I've been like this for so long, will things ever get better? Or, a feeling like nobody cares, you might say something like, may I trust that all will be well. May I trust that all will be well. So that's the end of that little practice. If you did decide to close your eyes, please open them, and you might want to adjust your posture to whatever suits you.
So you want to say a few words about some of the teachers who might have inspired you?
Yeah. And just clarify maybe a little bit more about compassion before I do that, Pat, if you don't mind. So what compassion really involves is care for our own well-being and the well-being of others. But there's also sensitivity so that we can attune to what's needed. The way sometimes people give out about do-gooders, and the do-gooder is someone who doesn't have that sensitivity, who intervenes and offers help when it's not wanted or not the kind of help that's needed, so sensitivity. And then sympathy, again a word that's gone out of fashion, but here sympathy means the ability to feel with and to resonate with people, whether they're in joy or in sadness, to feel with. It's not pity. And then empathy, which a lot of people talk about today, but there's a downside to empathy. So empathy is this feeling into and understanding what another person's experience might be like or what they might be thinking. And of course, the advertising industry uses empathy all the time to manipulate us by anticipating what we might want, or what we might be feeling vulnerable about, But the empathy we're talking about here is always for a positive reason. I want to understand you and where you're coming from, not because I want to manipulate you, but because I want to be supportive. And then also, if we're being courageous, if we're being compassionate, we need to bring a certain element of courage and distress tolerance as well. We need to be able to sit sometimes with things that are quite uncomfortable. And so we need a kind of a tenderness of heart. That's the sensitivity and the sympathy and the empathy. And then we also need a strength and even a toughness. And that links in with the courage. And then the last thing then, which sometimes gets forgotten, is we need a certain quality of wisdom. And that wisdom comes out of something like mindfulness practice, or just reflecting on your life, reflecting on the lessons you've learned. It's discerning between what's helpful and what's harmful. So you might say somebody, let's say a child, they have a chocolate donut and they enjoy it, and then they want another. And as a parent, you might think, well, maybe that's not a good idea right now. And you might have to say no. So discerning what is actually helpful and what is harmful in a situation. Giving a drink to somebody who has a drink problem is obviously going to be harmful, but they might want it, So the people I was talking about, by the way, because none of what I've said today is original to me, So Christopher Germer and Kristen Neff in the United States, they developed a course called Mindful Self-Compassion. You can do that at Ireland, actually, either face-to-face or online. And they have a number of books out as well. And they are partly academic, but they're also very good, friendly, relatable people. I mentioned already Paul Gilbert. He would has a big influence on some of the theory around this. And then people that I know, myself know a bit more personally, is Eric van den Brink, who's a psychiatrist, and Fritz Koster, who used to be a Buddhist monk, and he has worked in mental health for many, many years. They developed a course called Mindfulness-Based Compassionate Living, and they have brought out some books as well. You can find all that stuff. It's freely available on the internet if you want to Google them. So yeah, to me the key to it is, when I think about those people and I see videos of them on YouTube, I say, well, how do they come across as people? Do they seem friendly? Do they seem compassionate? And for me, the litmus test is yes, they are. All of them are. And so.
Right, I think we're going to come to the end unless you have anything else you'd like to add.
The only thing I would say to people, if you feel in any way inspired or interested in what I've said, developing compassion for yourself, it's a kind of a lifelong project, I can still catch myself being self-critical in ways that are unhelpful. But now when I catch myself, then I remember, So the first thing is to realize that this is not something that you read a book and then all of a sudden you're now 100% compassionate. It's a challenge every day, and every day brings up its own challenges, but we learn by getting it wrong, don't we?
Yeah.
And then kind of forgiving ourselves, and I think having a good sense of humor really helps as well. Thanks,
okay.
Pat. Yeah.
Right, so thanks very much, Dominic. Very interesting topic, yeah.